Willie's mom and dad thought their son was strange, with his careful study of dead birds and his collections of dead bugs and the way he might look at drifting clouds for an hour or more, but only Roxy would say it out loud. Willie the weirdo, she called him one night at the dinner table while Willie was trying to anyway, a clown face in his mashed potatoes with gravy for eyes. Willie was 10. Roxy was 12 and getting breasts, of which she was very proud. Except when Willie stared at them, which made her feel creepy. "Don't call him that," Mother said. She was Sharon. "But it's true," Roxy said. Father said, "I'm sure he gets enough of that at school. He was Richard." Sometimes, often, the family talked about Willie as if he wasn't there. Except for the old man at the foot of the table. "Do you get that at school?" Grandfather asked. He rubbed a finger between his nose and upper lip, his habit after asking a question or answering one. Grandfather was James. Ordinarily during family meals he was a silent man. Partly because it was his nature and partly because eating had become a chore. He was making slow work of his roast beef. Most of his teeth were gone. "I don't know," Willie said. "I guess sometimes." He was studying his mashed potatoes. The clown was now grinning a shiny brown grin with small globules of fat for teeth. Sharon and Roxy cleaned up after dinner. Roxy enjoyed doing the dishes with her mother. It was a sexist division of labor to be sure, but they could have undisturbed conversations about important matters. Such as Willie. Roxy said, "He is weird. That's why he's in the remedial." Sharon looked around to make sure they were alone. Richard had gone for a walk and Willie had retired to grandfather's room with the man Rich, sometimes called the old boy and sometimes the rumor. "Never dad or my father. Willie isn't like other boys," Sharon said. "But we love him anyway, don't we?" Roxy gave it some thought. "I guess I love him, but I don't exactly like him. He's got a bottle filled with fireflies in Grandpa's room. He says he likes to watch them go out when they die. That's weird. He's like a case history in a book called Serial Killers as Children." "Don't you ever say that," Sharon told her. "He can be very sweet." Roxy had never experienced what she'd call sweetness, but thought it better not to say so. Besides, she was still thinking of the fireflies, their little lights going out one by one. And Grandpa watches right along with him. They're in there all the time talking. Grandpa doesn't talk to anyone else, hardly. Your grandfather has had a hard life. He's really not my grandpa, anyway. Not by blood. I mean, he might as well be. Grandpa James and Grandma Elise adopted your father when he was just a baby. It's not like Dad grew up in an orphanage and got adopted at 12 or something. Dad says Grandpa hardly ever talked to him after Grandma Elise died. He says there were nights when they hardly said 6 words to each other. But since he came to live with us, he and Willie go in there and talk up a storm. It's good they have a connection, Sharon said, but she was frowning down at the soapy water. It keeps your grandfather tethered to the world, I think. He's very old. Richard came to them late, when James and Elise were already in their 50s. I didn't think they let people that old adopt, Roxy said. I don't know how that stuff works, Mother said. She pulled the plug and the soapy water began to gurgle down the drain. There was a dishwasher, but it was broken and Father, Richard, kept not getting it fixed. Money had been tight since Grandfather came to live with them, because he only had his pittance of a pension to contribute. Also, Roxy knew Mom and Dad had already begun saving for her college education. Probably not for Willie's, though, with him being in the remedial and all. He liked clouds and dead birds and dying fireflies, but he wasn't much of a scholar. I don't think Dad likes Grandpa very much, Roxy said in a low voice. Mother lowered hers even further, so it was hard to hear over the last few chuckles from the sink. He doesn't. But Rox, what? This is how families do. Remember when you have one of your own. Roxy never intended to have children, but if she did, and one of them turned out like Willie, she thought she'd be tempted to drive him into the deepest, darkest woods, let him out of the car and just leave him there, like a wicked stepmother in a fairy tale. She briefly wondered if that made her weird and decided it didn't. Once she heard her father tell Mother that Willie's career might turn out to be bagging groceries at Kroger's. James Jonas Fiedler, aka grandfather, aka grandpa, aka the old boy, came out of his room, called his den by Sharon, his lair by Richard, for meals, and sometimes he would sit on the back porch and smoke a cigarette, 3 a day. But mostly he stayed in the small back bedroom that had been Mother's study until last year. Sometimes he watched the little TV on top of his dresser. 3 channels, no cable. Mostly he either slept or sat quietly in one of the 2 wicker chairs, looking out of the window. But when Willie came in, he would close the door and talk. Willie would listen, and when he asked questions, Grandpa would always answer them. Willie knew most of the answers were untruthful, and he was aware that most of Grandfather's advice was bad advice. Willie was in the remedial because it allowed him time to think about more important things, not because he was stupid, but Willie enjoyed the answers and advice just the same. If it was crazy, so much the better. That night, while his mother and sister were discussing the 2 of them in the kitchen, Willie asked Grandfather again, just to see if it jibed with earlier stories, what the weather had been like at Gettysburg. Grandfather rubbed a finger beneath his nose, as if feeling for stubble, and ruminated. Day 1, cloudy and mid-70s. Day 2, partly cloudy and 81. Still not bad. Day 3, the day of Pickett's charge, 87 degrees with the sun beating down on us like a hammer. And remember, we were in wool uniforms. We all stank of sweat. The weather report matched. So far so good. Were you really there, Grandpa? Yes, said Grandfather with no hesitation. He passed his finger below his nose and above his lip, then began to pick his remaining teeth with a yellow fingernail, extracting a few filaments of roast beef. And lived to tell the tale. Many did not. Want to know about July 4th, Independence Day? People tend to forget that one because the battle was over. He didn't wait for Willie to answer. Pouring rain, boot-sucking mud, men crying like babies. Lee on his horse. Traveler. Yes, traveler. His back was to us. He had blood on his hat and the seat of his breeches. But not his blood. He was unwounded. That man was the devil. Willie picked up the bottle on the windowsill, Heinz Relish on the fading label, and tilted it from side to side, enjoying the dry rustle of the dead fireflies. He imagined it was like the sound of the wind in graveyard grass on a hot July day. Tell me about the flag boy. Grandfather passed his finger between nose and lip. You've heard that story 20 times. Just the ending. That's the part one like. He was 12, going up the hill beside me, stars and bars flying high. The end of the pole was socked into a little tin cup on his belt. My mate Micah LeBlanc made that cup. We were halfway up Cemetery Hill when the boy got hit spang in the throat. Tell about the blood. His lips parted. His teeth were clenched. In pain, I suppose. Blood squirted out between them. And it gleamed. That's right. The finger took a quick swipe beneath his nose, then returned to his teeth, where one pesky filament remained. It gleamed like rubies in the sun. And you were really there. Didn't I say so? I was the one who picked up the Dixie flag when that boy went down. I carried it 20 more running steps before we were turned back, not a stone's throw from the rock wall the bluebellies were hiding behind. When we skedaddled, I carried it back down the hill again. Tried to step over the bodies, but I couldn't step over all of them because there were so many. Tell about the fat one. Grandfather rubbed his cheek. Scritch. Then under his nose again, scratch. When I stepped on his back, he farted. Willie's face twisted in a silent laugh and he clutched himself. It was what he did when he was amused. And whenever Roxy observed that knotted face and self-hug, she knew he was weird. There, Grandpa said, and finally dislodged a long strand of beef. Feed it to the fireflies. He gave the strand to Willie, who dropped it on top of the dead fireflies in the Heinz jar. Now tell me about Cleopatra. Which part? The barge. Aha! The barge, is it? Grandfather caressed his philtrum, this time with his fingernail. Scritch. Well, I don't mind. The Nile was so broad we could hardly see across it. But that day it was as smooth as a baby's belly. I had the rudder. Willie leaned forward, rapt. On a day not long after